Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. Another week and another trade deal. We got Japan last week. We got Europe over the weekend. And Trump's showing us what the art of the deal really looks like. That macro minute, fantastic futures, stocks, and sports on today's Rebel's Edge. Bang.
Trump's new deal with the EU is so surprisingly good that it's being called the most valuable deal the U.S. has ever made. The European Union finally paid nearly all of Trump's demands after months of negotiations.
It's another big league.
Warned them of tariffs as high as 30 to 50% if a formal accord wasn't finalized by August 1st. And just days before the deadline, the two reached an incredible deal that's even better than the recent U.S.-Japan agreement. This deal contains two massive wins for the United States. First, the EU will invest $600 billion into America, creating hundreds of thousands of new jobs and buy nearly $1 trillion worth of energy and military defense equipment. Second, the EU will accept a baseline 15% reciprocal tariff on all their exports to the US, but the deal specifies that they will have to open up every single one of their countries to trade with the US at a 0% tariff rate, and so it's not clear if the Europeans got anything out of America.
The art of the deal, baby.
By the way, that's Pete Najarian. I'm John Najarian. The president, Pete, an absolutely historic deal. I mean, for European countries to tariff our goods at zero and to open up those markets, you know, to Jack Daniels, for instance, or, you know, the cars and trucks that American workers produce and ship over there. The reason we never really sold very many, Pete, is the tariff is so darn high on them. Well, now they have zero tariff on them. We, on the other hand, tariff their stuff coming in at 15%.
Yep.
Remember last week, Pete, when we were saying, you know, Europe's going to blink here. The reason they have to blink is they can't afford to not have the biggest customer on earth, which is us, not able to buy their goods.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. It's a long ways since that April and everybody was all freaked out and overreacting, probably, John, to some degree, and now we're starting to see some of these deals. Are we going to get them all done by August 1st? Probably not. But you know what? I think the target was to get probably that group of 8 to 12 or whatever, and we've got a few already. I think they're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. Well, as virtually all of you know, the deal is, as the gentleman said in the video, it's a 15% tariff on EU imports into our country. And they could have faced 30 to 50%, but because they negotiated ahead of time, they got 15. Deal includes commitments for, $600 billion in energy purchases and $750 billion, Pete, worth of military and so forth. There is no way anybody can look at this and say this is not a huge win for Trump and a huge win for American workers and American buyers, because I mean, it makes things fairer across the pond into the U.S., just like he did across the Pacific into the U.S. with Japan last week.
Yep, absolutely. It's been remarkable how much has happened just in a short period of time, actually.
Well, let's take a look at fantastic futures, Pete, because if gold is going down and crude oil is going up, you know that it's risk on rather than risk off. Now, is it a huge risk on day? Is the market up 1,000 points? No. But look at where we've been coming from, especially when you look at, as Pete said, the April lows and where we are right now. We're doing pretty darn well. So I'm going to say crude oil and gold are my fantastic futures, Pete.
Yep, and should be. It's amazing how things have really changed in a very, very short, when you really step back, a short period of time. You know, the volatility index, everybody was pretty freaked out, right? We got up and over 50, 60, whatever it was. And now all of a sudden we've been coming down. And over the last week or two, John, I can't help but just look at the range as well. You look at the range of the volatility index, it's basically the 15s. Do we get into the 14s? We have. Have we gotten to the 16s? A little. But we're basically at 15 something, on the VIX, somewhere between 15 and 1575, whatever you want to call it. I'd also point out real quick, because you were just talking about it, but the oil volatility index as well, that's up about 6% early, but 15% is what it's down over the last month. So interesting to see that as well, John. Most of July, we've been somewhere between, call it 30 and 36. Today, I think we're sitting right around 33. So that's starting to tighten up a little bit as well.
Well, let's look at some of the stocks, Pete. Some of them are somewhat surprising. I'll start with NICE. This is a software company, of course. And what are they doing, folks? Well, NICE is going to acquire Cognigi. This is to enhance their AI customer experience. They're apparently, Pete, going to pay almost $1 billion for it. And when was the last time? Well, and you and I both know it's happened frequently lately that somebody has spent a lot of money to acquire somebody else. And instead of the acquirer's stock going down and the acquiree going up, they're both going up, Pete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, this is apparently an acquisition that I think everybody thinks that there's nobody losing. Both are winning. And, they're also expecting this thing to move along pretty well, John. As a matter of fact, they think it's going to be a done deal by the Q4. So this is something that I think people really like what they're seeing here. Another reason, again, as I keep bringing up, because I keep seeing some of these financials just rip into the upside. We're talking all-time highs too, John. We're not talking about 52-week highs for a lot of these names, the JP Morgans and, go with all the rest. But they have been rocketing just like the NASDAQ, just like the S&P itself has been moving to the upside. And it's just another example of that. And I think these financials are going to really be really hot. We've already seen what they've reported, but going into the last half of the year, I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how the financials fare, because we're seeing deals. It's amazing.
It is. Well, then let's look at a deal that ties right into the tariffs, Pete, because some of that $600-700 billion that folks are going to be spending in Europe is tied right into what Trump warned them about in his first term, which was don't get too dependent on Russia for your oil and gas. Well, they did. And those that laughed at him at the time weren't laughing when that pipeline got cut out of Russia and prices went through the roof in Europe. Well, now, Pete, since they're going to be spending all this money, you've got LNG, which is Cheniere, of course, liquefied natural gas. That's the acronym LNG, and that's the stock symbol. Well, those guys and Venture Global, VG, are both seeing some good interest. They were both up over 6% early, Pete, and then LNG flattened out a little bit. I think that's an opportunity, because if they're going to be selling both here and there, Pete, in bigger numbers, how is that not going to impact their profitability going forward?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, John. As a matter of fact, they talked about the global demand and all the rest of the numbers that are out there, how they've been growing year after year, and LNG has just been exporting like crazy. I think the other thing is, one of the things they talked about is that they expect that their revenue is going to be up as much as 27% year over year quarter. So there's a lot of positives out there. When they did open the stock, to your point, they did open the stock. The stock actually was very close to 52-week highs. And then it kind of eased back. And I think, like you were just saying, I think that's probably an opportunity. And so we'll see how this plays out. But that it's a strange move, but I think it also, maybe there was enough sellers out there that got in long ago that they decided, you know what, we're going to take some off today. Maybe that's the case, but that doesn't mean it can't go up tomorrow or the next day or next week. I really like LNG. I think they have a great opportunity going forward.
Yep, and keep VG on your watch list too, folks, at Venture Global. All right, Pete, let's talk about a stock that I think some people will be mystified, but I think you'll be able to explain the mystery behind why ATHE, which is Alternity Therapeutics, this one shared positive, that's a plus sign, positive results from a mid-stage trial on their main drug candidate. Now, were they looking for more than they got? Well, patients apparently tolerated this very well, Pete. It affected overall neurological symptoms like 30% of patients. Brain image tests indicate that the drug really was effective in its target. So why is the stock down 16% instead of up?
It's a great question. And I was puzzled by it for a while, John. I was looking around trying to dig in deeper and deeper, like what's going on here? The numbers that they produced, that was pretty strong. It was a very small sample set is the only negative that I saw about it, but things looked pretty good. So it's a phase 2, by the way, of the clinical trials, which means you still got 3, you still got to go up in front and get that thing approved and all the rest of it. So you're part way there, but you're not all the way there. And here's where the problem, I think, lies. When I looked at it, John, I was trying to figure out what on earth is the problem. Looks like what it should be great news. They have an unbelievable amount of cash burn, and they are burning cash faster than that they have. Matter of fact, they have nearly double the total cash is getting burned on a daily basis. So that's a bit of a problem. And I think going forward, can they get to the end of the line, right? Can they get to the finish line where they can get something out there, where they can get some money that comes in or whatever, as opposed to just burning money, the cash burn that they're running through, just try to run their operation. So I think that's going to be interesting. And if what they've got is good enough and maybe valuable enough, shoot, you never know. Maybe somebody out there is going to knock on their door and maybe give them an opportunity and maybe buy the company, John, if they have enough belief in there. So there's a lot of things going on here, but I think the biggest one is that cash burn. It's the only thing that makes sense, because the numbers that I looked at, that you looked at, they looked outstanding. They looked extraordinary. And for a phase 2, you'd think that would just give them the immediate, let's just go to phase 3 right now and get this thing done. But I think the problem is the fact that they're burning up cash so fast.
Well, let's look at one that's going to have demand rather than cash burn, Pete, and that's SMCI, Super Micro.
Yeah.
We talked about this one last year when it got clocked and it went into the teens. It went into $17 a share or less. Now, moving to the upside by another 8% today, Pete. I showed it just recently at over $58 a share. And there's a partnership here with DigiPower, and DigiPower is a vertically integrated digital infrastructure company for integrated AI products. Now, you can only imagine the demand for anything that is digitally integrated AI products. That's like the only thing they don't have in there, Pete, is, oh yeah, we own Bitcoin too. But this one basically platform integrates liquid cooling, which, that's one of the big issues, folks, is the heat that these data centers produce. Well, they've got liquid cooling for this. And what they've done is they've partnered with Super Micro, that's DigiPower, which is symbol DGXX. They've partnered with SMCI to build and support NVIDIA's Blackwell architecture. So that is the chip that everybody wants. You got to keep the things running as efficiently as possible, and hence the liquid cooled. And this one is pushing SMCI back over $58, Pete.
Yeah, a really nice move for them. And as a matter of fact, you've got all sorts of different hedge funds out there, John, that find this to be something that is huge for them, and they're putting in large investments into that. So that I think is amazing. We're also, if you go back to May, it's sort of interesting. It shows you that they don't always have all the timing down just right, because the CFO decided to sell a little bit of the money than the SMCI, John, back in May. He sold 43% of what he was holding, and the average price was 45. It's not terrible, but if it's trading 58, which it is, you'd kind of like to top ticket if you could, I'm guessing, but not really happening. But I think the biggest part of this story is we're seeing this time and time again, John, where there's just a flood of money that's going into different companies right now, and hedge funds specifically going after SMCI. But I even like to look over at what's MicroStrategy do. Well, he's going into Bitcoin. I mean, everybody's investing in different pieces that are out there, I think more so than we've ever seen before. Makes it for a pretty interesting market, quite honestly. But I think TCW Group is one of those. These hedge funds, they're literally, John, just chomping at the bit to get after some of these things. And I think this is pretty interesting to see how many are lined up and starting to buy. With all those buyers, you can understand why those sellers are starting to push that number up a little bit. Yeah.
Yep,
Getting
exactly.
it up toward 60.
All right. Well, this is the segment in the program where we let Pete take over with sports, and take over he will. What are you going to kick it off with today as far as sports, Pete?
So I figured, last week I got on this similar topic, John, but talking about the NFL and talking about Aaron Rodgers. And I think it's really important because a lot of people are looking at, they've gotten tired of Aaron Rodgers, feels like anyway. I think a lot of people were like, well, this guy didn't even do all that well, really. He got hurt with the Jets, and then he comes back and he had an okay season. He had a lot more than an okay season. And you and I were talking about that, John. Threw 28 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. I would say that's a lot better than an okay. As a matter of fact, that's almost exactly the same numbers that he had, including yardage and everything else, his final year with Green Bay. So I look at this and I find it pretty interesting. I think Mike Tomlin knows defense as good as any coach there is. And the one thing that he's probably never been as strong at, John, has been on the offensive side. Well, they went out and got DK Metcalf. I think that was a huge get for them because that gives them an opportunity. He's a monster of a receiver. Hell, the guy's as big as most tight ends. They've got a really good tight end. They've got a great backup tight end. They've got a nice offensive line. They've got some really good running backs with the Steelers now. I'm starting to think more and more about the idea that with Aaron Rodgers, with an actual quarterback, because here's the thing. Try to name me who the last couple of quarterbacks were over the last couple of years for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it's really tough to find. But the reality is they've got this great defense. They've put together an offense. They probably shook things up more than they've ever done at Pittsburgh with Tomlin as the coach. And he's been there a hell of a long time now. I really think that these guys are all in on this year. And with Rodgers' age and everything else, and who knows what he does if he does anything after this year. But I'll tell you what, John, I saw some highlights just the other day, and the guy is slinging the ball just as good as ever. They had some really exciting throws that they were showing on Twitter and everywhere else. Pretty amazing. And I think that they haven't seen anything like Aaron Rodgers for a really long time playing for the Steelers.
Right. Maybe never, Pete.
Maybe
is
never.
The answer. Because, I know with 4 Super Bowl rings and nothing but respect for Terry Bradshaw. And I obviously am both a fan of him as a media guy as well as his career with the Steelers. But Pete, you want to put his stats against Aaron Rodgers' stats? It's not at all close. But for whatever reason, he decided to call Aaron Rodgers a joke. That was back in May when I guess it might have been more of a joke, Pete, because they were going back and forth. Is he going to sign? Isn't he going to sign? And maybe he was frustrated, and maybe that's why he said that. But I thought Aaron kind of handled it in a classy way, Pete, because he said, just as I did, that Terry's a legend. He's won 4 Super Bowls. He had a great career in the media as well, still has a great career in media. But like a lot of people, he says, he doesn't know me. So he said, I'd like to get to know him, rather than ripping him and saying, I'll put any of my seasons up against any of Terry's seasons. Yeah. He didn't say that. He said, I just think he should get to know me. And maybe there's a lot of crap about him out in the press, especially about vaxing and all the rest of it, or ashwagandha or whatever it might be, Pete, that people just want to think that's all Aaron Rodgers is about. He's, this California weirdo and all the rest. 3-time MVP, even on a crappy Jets team, he threw for 28 touchdowns, like you said, Pete. Were the interceptions higher than his career average? Yes. But was he under pressure almost as much as Caleb Williams? Yes. So I give him a little bit of a break there. And I think they might actually develop a little bit of a relationship here, Pete.
Yep, and they should. They should, because they're both great. Different eras of football, throwing at a heck of a lot more than Terry did when he was there, and different running back situations and all that. But the one thing that's always been there is the steel curtain, the Steelers, the unbelievable defense, which they still have, and they've paid a lot of money to keep it going. So that ought to be pretty interesting too. All right, John, I just thought we had to focus on this for a second too, because now that we're past the All-Star break and all the rest of the things in Major League Baseball, how about the New York Yankees? Now, they've had a bad run of late, right? They're 4-6 in the last 10. But as much as you know how much I love that Shohei Ohtani, the guy can do everything. And he is special beyond words. But a guy who's also pretty damn special, nobody I've seen in a while, Aaron Judge, first of all, he is a mountain of a man. I mean, the guy's like, what, 6'7", 270 or something like that. Great shape, great looking guy, does a lot of, everything he needs to do. He's a true Yankee, right? He right now is sitting there, John, with the top batting average in Major League Baseball. The number one, not some guy who's got a really good average. He's 342. So not so bad. He's got 37 home runs. He's ranked number 3. He's got 85 RBIs. He's ranked number 3. He's number 1 in hits with 129. This guy is an absolute machine. He's been a machine. He's really, really special player. And kind of like Shoho, John, I just urge people, not that I get nothing out of it, but I would say to people, hey, look, if you live in Milwaukee or somewhere outside of Milwaukee and you're going to play the Yankees, holy crap, go see Aaron Judge play. This guy is great. I've seen him in person against the Twins. The guy's absolutely unbelievable by size and by the numbers that he puts up. And, usually a guy who's hitting that well, John, when you talk about their average, they're not usually going to be hitting home runs. This guy does it all. So he's a pretty damn special player. And I don't know. What do you think? I mean, he's probably one of the few baseball players where I'd say he's maybe underpaid for what he's doing right now.
Oh yeah. And Pete, he gets to rest up a little, so he'll be coming back with fresh legs in 10 days because they just put him on the DL. But it's a right flexor strain, rather than something more serious. So this is a guy that, he would be out there playing hurt, Pete, but they're doing the right thing. They're sitting him down for 10 days so that he can come back as strong as he left. Because obviously tough guys like him sometimes want to play through those injuries. And a lot of times that's not the smart move, especially if you want this guy to take you deep into the playoffs and maybe win it all, because Ohtani wants to repeat, and he might. But if they get Judge back and he's the Aaron Judge that he's been in the first half prior to this injury, Pete, I think they're the team to beat. Absolutely.
Yep, they're special. The Mets are playing up to the caliber that they get paid for sure. So there's a lot of fun things going on in baseball right now, I think. It's pretty cool. Lastly, John, we got to touch on this one because you're directly part of it, but with Colorado connections that you've got. But Deion Sanders. So what in the world is going on for this poor guy? I mean, it was a couple of years ago, right? Or a year and a half ago, whatever it was, where a piece of his foot, they had to take off a piece of his foot or something like that. And, he's had some things going on. They had a really good year last year, relatively speaking, and everything else. And obviously he's got the kids and all these wonderful things. He's got a great recruiting class, but he's struggling with something, John, that we're going to find out about today, whatever that is. You have any thoughts on what that is? Probably not. I don't know what it is, but he's got something that is definitely, important enough for him that he actually left Colorado, went back down to Texas, hung around down there, probably was doing whatever medical things that he needed to do and all that. And I have no idea what it is, but, prayers go out to the guy for sure. But that's got to be pretty tough because we're starting football right now, man. I mean, the NFL's already a week in, and college football, these guys are getting ready to roll pretty damn quick. So what do you think? Do you have any thoughts about this whole thing with Deion? And he's got this, he's got his great contract, everything else, but he's got to be healthy, number one.
Yeah. He's got these blood clots in his femoral artery in his left leg, Pete. Mm-hmm. And like you said, because of these blood clots and what that's done to the circulation and so forth in that leg, he's had to be gone from Colorado for a long time. And people were speculating, well, is he going to return? And we'll know more when the rest of this press conference comes out, Pete. But basically he said, and I think I'm quoting it from ESPN, Pete, he said he made out his will when he left. Wow. So that sounds like a guy who's seriously worried about what the doctors might say. He's meeting with the doctors for the press conference. So again, one of those situations where you certainly hope a great player like this and an inspirational athlete will get a little extension on his time on the planet rather than having it cut short. He's only 57, Pete.
Yeah.
So he's a relatively young man, but when you see him, he looks much older. And a lot of that's because of these health issues, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's a terrible thing. We see it to a lot of people, and when you see it with a celebrity, it's even that much more in front of us and everything else. So it's interesting because he is a celebrity. The guy, one of the greatest athletes of all time. I don't think he's the greatest. I always reserve that for Bo Jackson, but he is a special athlete and a hell of a good, obviously football player, punt returner, all those kind of things. And he's proven himself to be a guy who can coach football pretty well because he's elevated his game pretty well over the years. So pretty impressive, and our prayers do go out to him, and hopefully whatever they have to say, there is some sort of cure or something that we can hold on to or whatever. But that's definitely a shame.
Yeah. Well, we will be back tomorrow, folks, at 1 p.m. Eastern time. We appreciate all of you joining us. We'll have some news about another channel picking us up, so we appreciate that. We'll have some news on that hopefully even later this week. So until tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, folks, have a great day, everybody. Thanks.